So let me draw your attention now to John's Gospel again. We have finished with chapter 8, and again, I give you fair warning, I am not preaching. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. So please don't hold me to or handcuff me to any homiletical formats. Starting in verse 1, and I'm going to stop at verse 11. I need the whole chapter, but I decided we've got more days to preach it, so I'll stop at 11 and we'll pick it back up again when the Lord says so. I'm reading from the New International Version, starting with verse 1 of the 9th chapter of the Gospel of John. The word of the Lord says, "As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, 'Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?' 'Neither this man nor his parents sinned,' said Jesus, 'but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. As long as it is day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming when no man can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world.' Having said this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. 'Go,' he told him, 'wash in the pool of Siloam.' This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, 'Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg?' Some claimed that he was. Others said, 'No, he only looks like him.' But he himself insisted, 'I am the man.' 'How then were your eyes open?' they demanded. He replied, 'The man called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes, and he told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see.'" You may be seated in the presence of our God. For a moment, I want to talk to you from this title, "Strength to Step Out of the Darkness." Strength to step out of the darkness. Hymn writer penned appropriate lyrics. "Walk with me." And then another one said, "Walk in the light. Beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright. Shine all around us by day and by night. Jesus, the light of the world. Oh, walk in the light. The beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright. Shine all around us by day and by night. Jesus, the light. If my daddy was here, he would say, oh, walk in the light, beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright, shine all around us by day and by night. Jesus, the light. Come on, I think everybody got it now. Oh, walk in the light, beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright, shine all around us by day and by night. Jesus, the light of the world. I got in the shower this morning and it hit me. Walk in the light, beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops, not of judgment, but of mercy shine bright. Oh, shine all around us by day, by night. In case you missed it, Jesus, the light of the world. AJ, it's been a rough week. And some days you need a hymn to get you through. I want to push. Y'all be seated. And I pray I make it through this, but if we don't, my brothers and sisters, this morning our sermonic spotlight literally shines on a brother whose life has been completely engulfed by darkness. Like those who are lost in their sins and are children of darkness, this brother has lived an entire life in darkness, catch this, unaware of the glorious light. Due to his congenital blindness, this brother has spent his life bumping around in darkness and constantly, catch this, tripping and falling from the stumbling stones that come in life. His congenital condition, which is the condition that has him blind from birth, has caused him to be confined to a life of begging. So much so, y'all, that he's known by his neighbors as a beggar, catch this, and not a blind man. Like those who live in sin, his darkness has shaped his reality to the point that he can't see or even perceive life being any better than what it's always been. It's with this thought of believing that we are prisoners of the darkness of our existence that we come to our text this morning, with our blind buddy being delivered out of his darkness into the marvelous light. If you look closely, our blind buddy wants to show us how to be strong enough to step out of darkness. I contend, y'all, that this text is tailored to teach us how to be strong enough to step out of the darkness. Look at it. In order to step out of the darkness, you must first be strong enough to be spoken about. Please don't miss this. This text, y'all, opens with Jesus and his disciples talking about this blind man's condition and its cause. Catch this, Regina, without the blind man's input. They are literally standing feet in front of him, talking about him in front of his face. You'll discover what's so strange about this narrative is that at no time when they approach the man do they address the man to talk to him, but yet they are talking about him in front of him. Please note, y'all, that there are three things that stick out about their conversation of our blind buddy in the text. First is that he's a theological quandary. Let me come and get you. In verses 1 and 2, the text says, as he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? In order to answer the question of theodicy, and that's what they've raised. And theodicy, y'all, is why God allows bad things to happen to good people. That's what the question they've asked. In order to answer the question of theodicy, the disciples have asked Jesus, why is he blind? Who's at fault? Was it him or his parents? Now, it's interesting because they asked a perplexed question. Matter of fact, if you were reading, your first question, if you're asking questions of the text, ought to be, how could it be him if he was born blind? And so you would understand that the Jews understood that there was a pre-existence before folk got here. You say, that's crazy. No, I'm not. You remember when Rebecca is pregnant and she can't figure out what the turmoil is in her stomach? The prophet tells her, you have two nations warring within your belly. That Esau and Jacob were fighting to jock for position to see which one would be born first. You remember Esau comes out first, but not alone that while they are pulling his leg out of his mother's womb, Jacob has hold of his heel. Pre-existence. You remember Jeremiah wants to turn in his resignation because he does not like his assignment in ministry, telling folk that judgment's on the way. They beating the heck out of Jeremiah, and God tells Jeremiah, you can't resign. That before you were formed in your mother's womb, I had already called you. Pre-existence. And so the question isn't ludicrous because they want to know, did he do something before he got here? And then they want to know, or maybe it's his parents. You'd understand that in Exodus 34, verse 7b, it says, God does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sins of the father to the third and fourth generation. They're asking a good question. Because there has to be a reason, Lord, why this brother is born blind. Why would a good God let something like this happen? Jesus answers in 3a and says, listen, neither the man nor his parents have sinned. Because the world, y'all, is in a fallen state and no longer in Eden, imperfection exists through the permissive will of our God. Jesus says, but to this brother, this happened to him so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. Please note that his answer is unique to just this particular blind man. He's blind because God is setting up a miracle. Doesn't mean everybody born blind is a setup. But this brother is blind because God's going to use him. Now, I still got some theodicy questions because you'll discover that this sort of parallels the Lazarus text that we'll get to eventually in chapter 11 of John. Because the brother we know now, the blind man, if you keep reading, his parents will tell us he's of age, and that means he's above the age of 13. He can speak for himself. So for at least 13 years of existence, he's been in dark. I was talking to my son, and Tom said, Dad, that isn't even fair. That he would miss his childhood, his adolescence, and his young years without seeing, just for God to make an example. I say, yeah, God does that. And you're right, it isn't fair. You see the same thing when Jesus shows up to Bethany and Martha comes out and asks, where in the heck were you? If you had been here, our brother would not have died. And to Martha and Mary's surprise, Jesus says, I stayed so he would die. I delayed my coming so that Lazarus would definitely die. It's my intention was to let you watch him take his last breath. It's my intention for your heart to hurt. My intention for you to have to go down to the mortuary and pick out a casket and pick out a tombstone. It's my intention for life to bring you the 4 worst days of your existence. Because I want to show you something. That I'm more than just a healer. I am the resurrection and the life. Sometimes God does stuff, watch this, in his own providence, his providential prerogative, because he wants to. And he leaves us asking the why question. I don't want you to think I have an answer for all of the why questions. I ought to be transparent enough with you to tell you I wrestle with the theodicy of God. Why, God, do bad things happen in the lives of good folk? I'm leaving here Friday and I'm on my way to Fort Lauderdale to bury my cousin. My cousin was born paralyzed. We've always called her TT, and I had to remember her first name is Ventisha. TT never walked, never spoke. As a matter of fact, doctors told my family she would never make it to the age of 7. She'd die before she hit 7. Going to bury TT lived 24-some years. 24 years on a feeding tube. With a prison of a body that left her unable to talk, unable to walk, or to really express herself. One of our fondest memories of TT is that Dad would come and ask what room is she in, and he would go to the room, and Brother Terry, he'd sit on the side of her bed and just sing. And whenever he sung, she would contort her body and smile to look at him. The only expression we saw TT make was to hear him sing, and he'd sing for hours. And I'm going to bury that prison of a body. And I still got the question, why? My cousin, Tony, who was down there, she came back and she showed me a picture. And I said, please tell me that's not the picture y'all putting on the program. She said, no, this is the picture that the family has got for the shirts. The family is going to wear shirts with TT on the picture. There's a picture of TT in her wheelchair with her contorted body with wings. And I said, I can't go with that. Because though I don't know why she had to do 24 years in that prison of a body, I do know she won't need a damn wheelchair in heaven. Told her that picture doesn't represent what God has in store. Because flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. And she's got to cash in that body. And so the next time I see TT, I might not be able to recognize her because she's no longer contorted and she no longer has a chair. My faith says that if he doesn't straighten it out on this side, he'll fix it on the other. Grandmama would say if it didn't get it in the wash, it'll get it in the rinse. And so like these disciples, they've got a theological quandary as to how this can be. And Jesus says this particular one bees because God has a plan. So not only is there his theological quandary, but then there's his thematic anomaly. Look at it in verse 3. It says, neither the man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. Now, you should know that there are only 4 narratives of Jesus giving sight to the blind in the Gospels. Matthew, he gives sight to 2 blind guys who come to him. In Mark, he gives sight to 1 blind guy. And then in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they record the same story of Jesus giving sight to blind Bartimaeus. But this cat is different Please don't miss this. This is the only one where the blind man, catch this, A, did not come to Jesus to get his sight. B, never had any sight. And C, wasn't looking to get any. Please don't miss this. That they are having this discussion, and if you really put this in full context, you have to, Liz, reach over to chapter 8. In the final verse of chapter 8, the crowd has gotten so mad with Jesus in the temple that they done picked up stones. They're going to kill him. And the Bible says Jesus slips off before they can hit him, and while he's trying to leave, because they're looking for him, he sees this mess of a man. And instead of continuing to care for his life and leave, he stops and the discussion begins. Bruh didn't come to Jesus. Bruh isn't asking for sight. And bruh has never missed seeing. There's a saying that says you can't miss what you never had. Please don't miss this. He parallels that of the sinner who is lost in the darkness of their sin. Most folk who are lost in darkness, catch this, aren't looking for Jesus. Don't know they really need some light in their life and aren't asking or pursuing to get it. And here's the catch that makes it so awesome is that even when we're not looking for it, when we don't know that we really need it, Jesus will come and in spite of our current situation, give us what we weren't looking for, asking for, or expecting. Why? To make our lives better. So not only is there the theological quandary, not only is there a thematic anomaly, but then this brother has or is a theoretical reality. Here, you got to catch this. In verses 4 and 5, Jesus says something that almost seems out of place. We're talking about this man being blind and who he's blind from, and that he's blind because it's the will of God, because God's going to do something. And so then Jesus says, as long as it is day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Now, if you aren't careful, you will almost think that that doesn't fit what's going on. We were just talking about this man being blind, who sinned, and that God's got him set up for a comeback. And then Jesus says, as long as it is day, we must do the work of God who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work, and while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Jesus is doing this. He is taking the theoretical and making it applicable. He's pulling it off of the chalkboard and he's putting it on the street. That I've been talking to you in abstract, and you've been struggling to catch what I've been saying in abstract, because over in chapter 8, Jesus gives his second I am statement. He says, I am the light of the world. That's an abstract deity claim. And because I see you are having trouble grasping the abstractness of it, what I'm going to do is show you in practical terms what I'm talking about. Because I am the light of the world, I want to show you how that is relative. And here is how it's relative, because the blind man represents those who are living in complete darkness because of their sins. And Jesus is literally the one who will bring them out of darkness into the marvelous light. Jesus says that this man is blind, y'all, so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. Then in verse 4, he says that we must do the work of God who sent me. Did you catch the shift? Because it doesn't work if you can't do it. It's an inclusive statement. Jesus wants us to know that as ambassadors to the kingdom of God, this work must be done by us. The way we've turned the world from darkness and march in the light is that we as ambassadors must represent the light. Over in chapter 8, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. He that follows me will never walk in darkness and will have the light of life. What Jesus is trying to tell you is that you can't shine unless you're following me. So from you all who call yourself following Christ from a distance, I mean, you so far back, not only does he not know you following him, you don't know you following him. He says, watch this, if you're going to be my disciples, never mind Christians, because it's a whole heap of folk under that title who are going to go to hell. But if you're going to be my disciples, the definition of disciple is one who follows Christ. And if you're following me, you reflect what I have. That's why Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5 on the Sermon on the Mount, verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hid. He says, I'm putting you into the world so that where you are, darkness will have to flee. Because I'm making all of you my light brights. And as long as you're close to me, you can reflect my light. And wherever my light shines, darkness can't comprehend it. And so when you show up, folk who are lost in the darkness of their sins will come out of darkness into the marvelous light. So he says, we must do the work. Not some of y'all. Because if you haven't given anybody a light, then you better check how close you are to the source. Let me push. I knew you'd get quiet there. In order to step out of the darkness, not only must you be strong enough to be spoken about, but second, y'all, you must be strong enough to be spat upon. Verse 6, the text says that after having said this, Jesus spit on the ground, made some mud with his saliva, and then put it on the man's eyes. Touch your neighbor and say, he used spit. Some of you would have missed your blessing. And especially y'all with OCD. You know, you folk who can't touch a salt shaker nor a ketchup bottle. He used spit to bless the blind man. The Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1:28, God has chosen what is insignificant, and catch this, and despised in the world, what is viewed as nothing, to bring to nothing what is viewed as something. Listen, don't get so caught up that your offense leaves you blind. As a matter of fact, when you think of who he is, you can't trip on his spit. Now, if Peter spat on me, I might have a problem. But Richard is Jesus. So I need you to catch this. In this scene, we see spit, dust, and clay. And the Bible is full of references and parallels. And so I want to show you, I'm finna show you one that's spit, dust, and clay. It is what I call, BJ, a recipe for creation. And asking questions of the text, and if you're going to be a good Bible studier, you must ask critical questions of the text. And I like to ask critical questions, Nisi. And I had to wonder, here's a question, AJ. How did the disciples know that this man was blind from birth? They're not living in Jerusalem. They're visiting Jerusalem. This man isn't so common until everybody knows his name, like Bartimaeus. He's a blind beggar. How did they know his blindness was congenital, that he's never seen? He's been blind from birth. Now, don't get it twisted. Jesus knew, because Jesus knows everyone. When Nathanael shows up, he says, now there is a Jew in whom there is no beguile. Nathanael say, how do you know me? He says, before Philip was talking to you, I saw you under the fig tree. The woman at the well, to get her to where he was trying to get her to, he said, let me cut across the field. He said, baby, go get your husband. She says, well, I don't have, I don't have one of those. Jesus said, yeah, in that now you've told the truth. You've had 5, and the one you with now, none of them belong to you. There's nobody he meets that he doesn't know. So when he writes in the sand and then stands up and says, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, don't get it twisted. He knows all of who you are. So Stanley, I'm not wondering how Jesus knew. He knows everything. But I'm wondering, how did the boys know? This, y'all, would suggest that by looking at the man, they could tell that he had never seen before. So I was on the phone with my son, the medical student, last night. And I said, Tom, I need some help. How could the disciples know that this man was born blind? Tom said, well, if they could know that his optical nerves were not connected to his brain. I said, unfortunately, they do not have the equipment like modern medicine to see that, they had to get this at a glance. I say, now, put your doctor's hat on again and tell me how, in a glance, would they know that he'd never seen before. And we concluded that either he has no pupils or he has no eyes. So now this text takes a new turn. Because I need you to catch this. If he's blind because he has no pupils or he has no eyes, we then need to know that this is not a healing narrative. Because a healing narrative would suggest restoration. We can't do restoration with this miracle because it's not there. And so instead of restoration, we are now talking creation. And I need you to catch me, because we got spit, we got dust, and we have clay. And because no text is in a vacuum by itself, there is a parallel text where we see dust and clay that's used in creation. And so that Jesus spat on the ground and then he bent over to the ground, and with his hands the Lord made spit and dust, and he made clay. We've seen this before, because the Genesis record states that God in his anthropomorphic form came down and bent to the ground, and from dust he formed man, and then he blew his ruah into man, and man became a living soul. Nephesh in the Hebrew. Same hands. I'm not fixing what was broken. I'm creating what was missing. In the Latin, it's called ex nihilo. It means to create from nothing. That God, with ex nihilo, stepped out into nothing and said something and brought everything into being. And so he bends down on the ground with his hands and he makes clay. And then he smears and wipes it where the man's eyes would be. And if that's the case, then this has to be one of the greatest miracles that we see of Jesus. I know, speaking to the wind and the waves, that blows our mind. Feeding 5,000 without counting women and children with a few fish and a couple of loaves, that blows our mind. But this one here is something different. We've seen Jesus heal the man with the withered hand. And he's got his little hand deformed. And Jesus says, stretch out your hand. And with his deformity, he stretches it out. And Jesus makes it whole again. But what we're seeing with the blind man is that if it was the man with the hand, it would mean he had no arm. And from nothing, he would create an arm. Stay with me. In other words, y'all, the Lord has the power to create in your life that which you've never had. When you're wondering how God can fix you because you've grown up with deficiencies. Some didn't have a father, and some didn't have a mother, and a few didn't have either or. And your life has been scarred, has been altered, and is scabbed over because of the deficiencies you had. But the Lord has a way of creating what you've never had. The old folk used to say it this way: he's a mother for the motherless. He's a father for the fatherless. He explains to Moses that, here it is, Moses, you want to know my name? You tell the children of Israel, I am that I am. Well, what does that mean? I am whatever you need me to be, wherever you need me to be, however you need me to be, whenever you need me to be. I'll be whatever you need. All you got to do is call me. Let me push time. I got communion. Okay. In order to step out of darkness, not only must you be strong enough to be spoken about, strong enough to be spat upon, and then you must be strong enough to be sent away. In verse 7, Jesus said, go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. This word means sin. So the man went and washed, came home seeing. Literally, y'all, Jesus sent him to the pool of sin. And I can't get into it today because it's going to run into the next sermon. But there's a reason the pool is called sin. And it's a reason Jesus sent him to a place called sin. Because when he leaves the place called sin, he's going to be sent into the world. Okay, I put a pause there. We'll catch that on a few Sundays. Catch this. This man doesn't know Jesus from Adam. He never met Jesus before. But he's willing to go where he's sent. Let me fix it for you. He's on his corner, sitting on the curb. He's got his bucket. It's a crowd of folk, Lou, in front of him. He's begging for alms. And this group of people have stopped to conversate. Natural instinct would say, hey, y'all get from in front of me with that. If you ain't helping, don't hurt, move on. You blocking the bucket. And he's listening to people talk about him and his mama them. Then this cat done spit. How he know he spit? He heard it. Catch that on your way home. And he done wiped this stuff on my face. And I don't know him, but Calvin, he told me, go wash. Why in the yaya will I go anywhere when I don't know him? Okay, because I asked these questions, let me help you. I believe he went first because he felt something. I serve you a record. It is impossible to be touched by the Lord and not feel anything. I want you to know, take it from me and those of us who've been touched, it is impossible for the Lord to touch you and you not know that you've been. The first reason, Maggie, he's going is because never before has a man touched me like this man. I might not know who he is, but I know he can do something that nobody else has done. And I felt something that I've never felt before, Regina. And because I felt it shut up in my bones, I'm on my way to go to where he's sending me. Some folk will tell you, I don't know why you keep going to church. I don't know why you keep giving your tithes. I don't know why you keep shouting like you shout. That's when you tell them because you didn't feel what I felt when he touched me. You didn't feel how I felt when he pulled me out. You didn't feel it when he took the taste of the liquor out of my mouth. You didn't feel it when he took the taste of the crack out of my mouth. I know it's something about his touch, and because I've been touched by him, I'll do it all. Touch your neighbor, say you ought to get touched. You ought to get touched. Y'all sit, I got to get out of here. Not only James do I believe he went because he's been touched, but secondly, I believe he went because something he had never had before. That all of a sudden, Sister Liz, he got hope. I submit, I contend to you that he's been sitting on this corner day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and he's content with the corner and the change. But now, something has sprung up in him. He's got hope. And hope says that you might not know what it is, but better is wherever he's sending you. Hope say, get up, boy. You leave the bucket, leave the money. Get up, because something's happening and you don't want to miss your moment. Hope says, get up. That even though it looks like it's the same old day that it's always been, and I'm in the same old place, there's something different going on, and God is moving in this place. And when you know God's moving on your behalf, then hope should spring eternal. And when hope springs eternal, that's when folk get to moving. Folk want to know, well, what you getting dressed up for today? I just feel something. I feel like something's getting ready to break loose in my favor. Folk want to know, you've been down to that job and they still haven't given you the promotion. What makes the day different? When I got up this morning, I felt something I hadn't felt before, and I feel like I'm going to get the answer I've been praying for. Folk want to know, why haven't you walked out on your marriage? Why haven't you thrown in the towel? Because I got up this morning and there was something within me that said, better days are on the way. Okay, let me help you. Though the instructions are simple: go, wash, in the pool of sin. The task is challenging because he's blind. The pool, literally, from where they are, is on the other side of town, not across the street. As a matter of fact, for a blind man who doesn't know north from south, east from west, please notice that Jesus nor his disciples led the man to the pool. In other words, buddy, if you're going to get it, you got to get up and start walking towards your promise. I can only assume, because he's still in darkness, Nikki, that he's stepping and stumbling. Might even fall a few times. And people want to know where you're going. You can't see where you're going. Get out the way, man. Where are you going? What's the hurry? I'm leaving who I was. You'll catch that on your way home. Move, man. I might have to feel my way around some stuff. But I'm going to keep on until I fall in water. Because hope tells me every time I fall, get back up. Hope tells me that last trip hurt, but it's going to be better after a while. Hope tells me keep on striving and keep on stepping. Even when mornings are rough and your heart don't feel like it, keep on walking, because hope says if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, eventually you will arrive where the Lord is sending you. Text says, and when he gets there, he washes in the pool, and then he comes home seeing. He gets there, he washes in the pool, and he comes home seeing. Someone asked me the question, when did he get his sight? And the best answer I can give you is that it happened somewhere between wiping and washing. But this I do know. Whereas he was once blind, now he can see. I got to get out. I've held you too long. Let me give you my final one, and we're out of here. In order to step out of the darkness, not only must you be strong enough to be spoken about, spat upon, and strong enough to be sent away, but finally, you must be strong enough to speak up. Verses 8 and 9, text says, his neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, isn't this the same guy who used to sit and beg? Some claim, yeah, that's him. Others say, no, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am the man. Let me help you, and I'm out of here. First of all, you'll see that there is a mistaken identity. Please note that his neighbors, folk who saw him daily, are having trouble identifying who he was. Please don't miss this. This is because they only knew him by what he did. You missed it. You missed it. It took me a second. I'm going to come get you too. They knew him by his symptoms of his condition. They knew him as a beggar and not as a blind man. if you listen to his neighbors, they never described him as a blind man. They didn't say, is this not the man who was blind? They say, no, isn't this the Negro who was begging? Every time we saw him, he was begging. We went the other way because he was begging. He hear your voice. He call your name. Hey, Lucy, is that you? Begging. Always begging. I see him, man. Come on, man. Give me a little something. He's always begging. This is how we know him, not by his name, but by his condition. Some said, David, it's not him. He only looks like the dude. And the reason it can't be him was because he's not begging. I'm going to give you this and I'm out of here. Begging was what he did. That was his symptom. But blindness was who he was. That was his cause. Now that he's been changed, he no longer does what he used to do. And so some folk don't know who he is because he's no longer doing what they knew he used to do. Okay, I got to come and get you. And so here's why they hung up, Stanley. They hung up because I only know you by your symptoms. And the moment you are no longer doing what you did, I'm having trouble making a positive identification. Well, let me help you because I got to show you practical. There's some folk in here, if you don't mind for a moment participating in the sermon, there's some folk in here who can testify that I no longer do what I used to do. And you might not know who I am now, because I'm not doing what I used to do. And the reason I don't do what I used to do is because I met a man. And my life has been changed. And because he's changed me, I don't walk like I used to walk. I don't talk like I used to talk. And I don't act like I used to act. Why? Because the Lord is changing me. Okay, I'm done. I promise you, I'm out of here after this one. Even though they struggled to make an identification of who he was, you'll discover there is a positive identification in the text. Please don't miss this. When asked in verse 10, who or how then were your eyes open? They demanded. He replied, the man they called Jesus made some mud, put it in my eyes, told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see. I promise I'm done. I promise my time is out. But you got to ask some critical questions. I asked Nikki, how does he know his name? Because I serve you record, he never saw him. Because there's no text that happens in a vacuum. You'll discover that the parallel text to this text, the blind man who is sent to the pool of Siloam, is paralleled with the text in chapter 5 where we have our paralytic pal at the pool. And so both involves pools, both involve handicaps. You remember the paralytic pal, he's been there for 38 years. He's complaining nobody could put him in, and he really would get in, but Negroes got this every man for himself, God for us all mentality around this pool, and I would have been in if Negroes cared more about me. You remember with our paralytic pal, Jesus finally just told him, man, get up. And he got up, and Jesus said, now pick up your bed and walk. Man got his bed, went and walked, got to the temple. He had his bed. They asked him, why are you walking with that bed? And he said, the man who took me off the bed and put the bed on me told me to pick up the bed and walk. And here it is. They asked our paralytic pal, well, who is he? And the paralytic pal, after conversating with Jesus and looking at him for a long time, said, I don't know who he is. They said, hold on. Did you talk? Yeah, I saw him. He was here. He had a group of guys with him. He talked to me. I talked to him. I know how he looks. But I don't know who he is. Red flag, and I'm going home. This brother who's never seen, without eyes, can make a positive identification of who it is that has changed his life forever. And you want to know how? There go the question you ought to ask. It's because, unlike the paralytic at the pool, who Jesus just spoke to, this brother knows Jesus by name because Jesus put his hands on him. Here's how I know him: because he touched me. The hymn writer picked it up and said, shackled by a heavy burden, beneath the load of guilt and shame, then the hand of Jesus touched me, and now I am no longer the same. He touched me. Oh, he touched me, and the joy that flooded my soul. Here it is, something happened, and now I know he touched me. And made me whole. That's all I got. I got to get out. I'm sorry. I can't even close on this one here. But is there anybody here that can testify that have been touched by the Lord? And if you ask me, how did I get to where I am? If you ask me how I changed who I used to be, if you ask me how in the world can you be after what you've been, if there's anybody here that can testify that he touched me, and because he touched me, my life is no longer the same. Just do me one favor. Turn to your neighbor and tell your neighbor, neighbor, I don't know what you're going through, but I do know this. You ought to let him put his hands on you. Neighbor, if you've ever been touched by the Lord, just go ahead and give him a high five. Well, that's the wrong neighbor. Turn to the other neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know how dark your situation might be, but here's what I do know: be not dismayed. Whatever be your tide. The Lord will take care of you. Beneath his wings, love abides. The Lord will. That's all I got. Listen, the doors of the church are open.
Thank you for watching our on-demand service at the Abyssinian Missionary Baptist Church. If you want this sermon in its entirety, then click on the App Store below. You'll be directed to our website, and you can place your order there for this sermon or other sermons we have available. If you're in the Jacksonville area, we'd love for you to come and visit us. We're located at 10325 Interstate Center Drive, just off of I-95 and Dunn Avenue. Our worship times are as follows. Our early morning worship on Sunday begins at 7:30. Our Sunday school begins at 9 o'clock, and our mid-morning worship begins at 10:15. Also, you can join us on Wednesdays for our midweek Bible study beginning at 6:30 p.m. Thank you again for tuning in and visiting our website. God bless.